Michael Hearn is a business leader, consultant, and former entrepreneur who helps founders navigate high stakes growth and decisions. By 30, he had already sold his own company, led 40 plus bankers, and advised over 1,000 businesses, from startups to multi million dollar operations. Having built and exited ventures himself, his leadership style is forged in real world failure and resilience. Now he equips others to move forward with clarity, even when the path is uncertain. Michael, thanks for being in the studio. How are we doing today?
Oh, doing well. Blessed to be here. First and foremost, thank you all for giving me the platform to kind of tell my story. And also, as I get to meet Mr. Eric and Yimi, I'm looking forward to fostering that connection. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
bet.
pleasure here.
You bet. Looking forward to a good conversation. We'll let Yemi fire off with our first wild icebreaker here.
Okay, Michael. So, what is a food hill that you're willing to die on? For example, I have two really big ones. The first, pineapple absolutely goes on pizza, and you can have ranch with your pizza. But also, I feel like peanut butter is what they serve you in hell.
Okay. Interesting take there. So I would be of the opposite of you. I think pineapple or any fruit for that matter does not belong on pizza, but I do like ranch with pizza. So I can agree with you there. I think that my food hill that I would die on is sushi is probably the best food of all time. So much so that I would argue that when the heavens and the earth were created, if you're following that biblical ideology, when Jesus from God rested on that seventh day, he was probably enjoying some sushi because it was
Nice.
good. And so that's kind of the hill I'll die on. Sushi is my top all time favorite food.
That's great.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome.
What
I feel like that makes up for the
what
pizza.
Yeah. There are enough good things to put on pizza. Like fruit for me is a total toss up. Like I can do it, but I don't care enough about it. Like I'll probably never order pineapple on pizza because it's just ranks kind of low on my priority list. But we won't get into the peanut butter conversation. That's
It has a twang.
It really
yeah,
does.
yeah. It's not bad. It's not bad for sure.
Yeah.
Michael,
If you're
what
gonna
do you?
do it, you got to do it with a ham.
Yeah. with the
That's
ham.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You wouldn't want
Bacon,
like
regular bacon, though.
I would try a slice.
bacon. Okay, I'd
Yeah,
try that.
regular bacon.
I think next time we get together, we should just like get you like a pineapple mango sausage pizza or something. Just like do some random stuff, and let's try that.
That sounds kind of good.
What Michael, what's the weirdest thing you've ever collected? So like childhood all the way up.
The weirdest thing is probably pocket knives. Growing up,
Okay.
every Christmas, my dad would get us a new pocket knife, and I've continued that tradition. And then this year for Christmas, my son will get his first pocket knife. And
Nice.
so I still have them. I still have all of them, actually. I have them in a backpack in my office. And for like 20 years worth of collecting pocket knives.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
That's
Very
cool.
cool.
Very nice.
Bio mentioned banking. Have you ever been a part of a bank heist?
No, I have not. Not sure if that's on the table or off the table, but I have yet to be a part of a bank heist.
As of today, you've not participated. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, as of today.
I mean,
That's
cash flow
awesome.
isn't the podcast name, so
Yeah, I
right.
mean, when they were a couple years back, they were having almost like a run on the banks with some of the smaller banks. I wonder if that would count as a heist, because you're taking all
Yeah.
your money out. But
Right. Some loose definitions there might
yeah,
qualify.
depends on
That's
your
great.
perspective.
That's awesome. So, Michael, hopping into it here, I want to start off. I know we didn't touch on this in your bio, but I know a little bit about your background and particularly your first startup in that world. That, as you've told in the past, didn't quite pan out. Can you tell us a little bit about that first startup? What was the vision you had going into it? And at what moment did you realize this isn't going to work out? Can you start us off there?
Yeah. So my first company was called US Landscaping, and I started it in 2017 towards the end of my high school career. And what I originally, my envisionment was I needed to pay for college. And so I had worked a job at the mall, at the local mall at the time, and they were paying like $11 an hour or 11.50 an hour. And that just wasn't enough, especially when I could go cut somebody's grass in 30 minutes and make $30. So that's what started it. And I didn't quite have the money for college at the time and knew I didn't want to take out loans if at all possible. So I started cutting grass in the neighborhoods and then grew that to the point where I had 5 or 6 employees and started taking on larger projects. Got to where I did flagstone patios, pergolas. I also got into some hardscape features, and really around 2019, I ended up having a heart attack. And when I had the heart attack, I quickly realized that I had built a job for myself. I hadn't built a company, because without me,
Mm.
nothing was sustainable. And so I had some mentors in my life at the time and was like, look, here are the numbers. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm looking at doing. And I also don't really want to do this anymore. And so it kind of made sense to dissolve it. Some of my larger contracts, I had to find people or other companies to take over. And it just kind of quietly went away into the night. And yeah, so that's kind of what happened with that.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So after after that first, failure, setback, learning experience, you obviously had to adapt. You had to lead under pressure. You had to rebuild, and it eventually launched your tea business. Walk us through that rebuilding phase. Like, what did you have to unlearn about yourself? How did those lessons shape the way that you approach your second venture? And then I'm thinking about, when you had that first heart attack, the very next year, the world shut down for the pandemic. Like, how did that
Yeah.
all kind of come together?
Yeah, so following the closure of US landscaping, or the dissolvement, my wife and I, we were expecting our first son. And because of health issues and things like that, we actually had to move back in with my parents. So we were newlyweds living with my parents, and I had no form of income. And so my dad really started to push me. He's like, as you're getting healthy, what's next for you? What's next for you? And I started to drink tea because the doctor recommended it. And then lo and behold, I found out that there was no tea company in our town. The last one that was present was Tivana, and Tivana was sold to Starbucks for a couple $1 billion, and Starbucks shut every Tivana down. And so I was kind of in this cool, unique space of thinking about how could I serve the community with a tea house, because people loved Tivana in our town. But then secondarily, what could I do that would provide for my family? And so my dad and I worked on the business plan for a long time, trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do it, what I wanted it to be called. It was later called IV Tea Company, like an IV in your arm, because tea was my lifeline at the time to get healthy. But then also, my son is Michael Dean Hearn the fourth, and so it was kind of a nod to him. And
Nice.
so we start setting everything up. I'm doing my product testing. By this point, I'm building a website and just really trying to get my name out there. And so we start doing farmers markets, and I raise enough money to open my first brick and mortar store. And that brick and mortar store was at the Vancouver Mall in Washington State, and it was inside the old Tivana location. So when I opened, everybody thought Tivana was back, even though my sign said something different. But they just associated the tea with Tivana, so that was super cool.
It kind of
And
works
then the
out.
world shut down. Yeah, but then the world shut down. So we signed our lease in January, and then come March,
Wow.
everything shut down until summertime. And so we back to almost a complete failure. You've got to pay this rent. You've got to figure out what's going on. Nothing has ever been like this before, or at least in my life, nothing's been like that. And so you've got to pay this rent. We're doing farmers markets, picking that back up, and I'm doing everything I can just to stay afloat. And then when the mall finally reopened and society kind of started reopening, the traffic was dead, because people didn't want to be in crowded spaces. And so we had to get really, really creative. We started at the time, TikTok was starting to get popular. So I started making TikToks about our products. We put our products on DoorDash and Grubhub and those types of platforms, so that people could order drinks similar to, like, if you're going to Starbucks and you order something. And then really just heavily focusing on Facebook, because word of mouth is how we grew the fastest. Because of COVID, though, and how much of a financial setback it was, the first 14 months that our store was open, I was the only employee, and I worked there 7 days a week during mall hours, which were 10 a.m., 30 p.m. And I also had to stay and clean up afterwards, and I had to get there early to disinfect because of what the COVID protocols were. So
Wow.
for the first 14 months, 7 days a week, that's what I did. And
Jeez.
during that time, I had a little bit of downtime when I was at work, and I was able to finish my college degree while working. So that's the initial story. We got to the point where we were growing fast enough. By this time, I had a couple employees, and we had regular help and regular cash flow. And I was like, okay, let's take this next step of faith, and let's move out of the mall, and let's get our own brick and mortar store. And so I did. And we signed the lease in, again, January. I'm not buying anything or signing any more leases in the month of January. I think for me, January is a hard time because we signed this lease to open up our new store, and I had saved up a bunch of money, and my dad and I went in and we physically like built out the store with our own hands. It was a really cool place. And we signed the lease in January, and then it was February or March rolled around and the city decided to do road construction. And we were on Broadway downtown and they ripped up the entire road and all sidewalks and they boarded up windows and things. So nobody even knew you existed. And it was like that for over a year. And
Wow.
during that time, I had to rethink again. So I started at the time it was just tea and coffee. And so then I went and got a food license and started making pulled pork for all the construction workers. So every day I'd get out there with my smoker and I would do that. And then I would do, on other days, we would do brisket and mac and cheese. And so when you get out there and it's cold outside and that smoke's rolling and all day they're just sitting there working, smelling it, we would sell out. And so it was really, really cool. And that was a really cool opportunity at that time. And then as the community kind of found out more about us, we had people that would walk through the construction to come see us. We would sell stuff on DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats. And during that time, though, that's really when I started trying to make an impact on the community because the community was helping feed us and keep our doors open, but we really needed more. And so I called like our local Clark College, that was our local community college, and we gave students 30% off everything if they would come in and kind of created a safe space for students to the point where we became one of their preferred places for students to go. And we were maybe a mile from the college. And then we partnered with the Vancouver Symphony, which is their local orchestra. And we became their preferred partner and sponsor for all drinks at all of their events. So we, every month they would have a new symphony and we would prepare 400 or 500 drinks for patrons. And then we
Wow.
started partnering with local restaurants, like Nom Nom was one of my bigger clients at the time, and we went in and built an entire tea program for their restaurant, one that's actually still being used today. And so finally, they got the road reopened, and when they reopened the road, coincidentally, I had also gotten my liquor license at the same time. And so we were the first, and to my understanding, only tea shop or coffee shop in Washington State that served tea and coffee cocktails. So if you came in and you wanted an espresso martini, you could get that. We didn't have beer, we didn't have wine, but then we also did some crazy stuff. Like I had green tea shots that were actually made with green tea, and we had butterfly pea flower lemonade that when you would take the blue pea flowers and mix it with lemon, it would turn purple, and then we'd put edible glitter in it, and you'd stir it around, and it looks like a potion. So we did all that.
That's cool.
And but when they reopened the road, I'm not sure if you've dealt with a lot of traffic or road construction, but you start to avoid areas. And
Mm,
because they had shut it down once they opened it, they announced it publicly. But unless you were specifically looking for that to be reopened, you would have continued driving how you've been driving the last year. And so
interesting.
that's kind of when I made the decision of, okay, what's next for me? I'm starting to look for an exit. And I was one of two on that strip remaining businesses that were still in business. Everybody else had gone out of business during
Wow.
that time.
Dang.
And yeah, so it was not a fun thing. The city never helped with damages to traffic or anything like that. So everybody was sink or swim. And after experiencing that and experiencing what I did during COVID, I decided that, I'm going to wash my hands clean of this. I'm going to try to find a buyer and I'm going to see what my next adventure is. And so that's kind of what happened with IVT.
Was it hard to find a buyer? How did you go about that? What was like the
So
most surprising part of the sales process for you?
So, was it hard to find a buyer? Maybe. I had developed a lot of relationships with the local coffee shop owners all across town because a lot of the smaller coffee shops would want tea, but they didn't want to figure out that whole process. So they would just buy from me. So when I announced that I was selling it, I sent an email out to all of the people that I supply tea to. And that's one of those people ended up being the people who purchased it. And so it was difficult in the sense of trying to figure out what the evaluation should be. It was difficult in the sense of, in general, finding a buyer might be difficult, but I had already fostered those connections. So in my experience, it was a little easier. The most
Mm.
surprising thing, though, is probably the grief that I experienced it once I sold.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was mentally done. So in my life, there's been a lot of things that have happened where I think that I have head knowledge and heart knowledge. Head knowledge is where you think you're done with something, and heart knowledge is where your heart actually wants to go.
Yeah.
And so when I sold it, my head knowledge was this is the best decision to make, and this is going to be what's best for you to see your kids and see your wife and be home more. But selling it, I mean, that was my baby. I worked at all those hours. I constantly was trying to improve my processes, but also be a member in the community, and also had employees that I had to let go when I sold it. And that was not something I was looking forward to. And so I sell it, and we do this big thing on social media, letting the new people know that there's new owners and that my hands are kind of washed clean from it. But like to this day, I still get emails. People email me asking what's going on with the tea company, or they're trying to place an order.
Hmm.
And it's been
Oh,
several
wow.
years since I sold. And so it never goes away, but I also know it's under good stewardship, and that the people who bought it, it's still around. So what I built was impactful.
What did you do after that? Like, how long did it take you to move forward? Like, you mentioned spending more time with your family and kind of like being a little bit of like, oh yeah, so I could do all this other, I would have all this free time, but I can definitely see the emotional aspect of not realizing how much, what is it, joy, I guess, or fulfillment of actually working and doing something like building something for the community that other people can take part of. But then at the same time, you have your family that you also want to give time to. So how long did it take you to get back in
Yeah.
or move on from that?
Yeah, so when I sold the company, I was approached by my former boss in Washington. His name's Peter. Peter, if you're watching this, awesome, awesome guy. I love Peter so much. In fact, he's still a mentor and speaks regularly in my life. But when I was selling the company, Peter was kind of like, hey, I've seen what you've done in the community. I've seen the impact you've had. Do you want to have more? And once again, I didn't understand at the time what that meant or what that responsibility would look like, but he offered me a job in banking, and he was like, "You've got a lot of local ties with the community. You can speak business. You don't know anything about banking, but I can teach you that." And so he took a chance on me, and so from the time that I had closed the facility and gotten everything out of it to the time that I started working, I had 6 weeks. So during those 6 weeks, when I wasn't moving stuff around and covering all the bases that needed to be covered, I was getting to take my kid around town, and we'd go to parks, or it snowed a lot during that time. So we'd play in the snow and stuff like that. It was a much needed reset. And part of it too was like, sometimes you have so much momentum that it doesn't equal progress. It's just
Mm.
busy work, if that makes sense. And so a lot of what I did, even thinking about it now, like if I were to go tomorrow and restart a tea company, there's a lot of stuff I'd do differently, because I was at the same time, while I was trying to grow and learn and do the best I could, a lot of what I did was survival. I had to do it because I had responsibilities. And looking back on it, I think that that was kind of fight or flight at times. And so once I had those 6 weeks, it was like almost like a sabbatical, like you started to realize things about yourself that you hadn't thought about in a long time. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story behind that.
Tell me, so with all that, I mean, you mentioned you had a lot going on between COVID and all the things taking place as you're building this business, but kind of coming into the banking realm and having led so many bankers across multiple states, tell me about, I guess, a leadership crisis that you might have experienced in that sphere and how that affects the way that you're advising entrepreneurs now, right? So you've been an entrepreneur, you're now a banker. Like, how are you kind of merging those two worlds when somebody's coming to you from a business banking relationship and wanting your insight on something in that case?
Yeah. So for starters, I probably had zero business getting this job.
Okay.
I knew nothing about banking, and Peter took a chance on me, and we've made a lot of progress since then. But I was the youngest person on my team by like 10 years at the time, and
Okay.
I
Wow.
also the position that I received, typically you have to work at a bank for 6 or 7 years. So when I first got there, it was a lot of uncertainty, because you're expected to be a part of this team, and everybody got there differently than you did. And so in that environment, it didn't feel like I belonged. Fast forward a couple months into it, and we're closing deals and things are going well. I had to earn that trust and earn that respect. So that was probably one of the most difficult things, not necessarily because you're leading like that team because I wasn't leading that team, but I was a part of a team that at the time I had just had to earn my stripes. And they had to realize that I was there because of what I could do and what that would look like. So with that being said, because of the position that I held, I had at the time in Washington, I had 4 branches, and then now in Kentucky and West Virginia, I've got a total of 6 branches. And then each branch has 2 or 3 bankers. Some had 4 or 5. And then you've also got branch managers. And so you've got a variety of different ages. I've got people that are 19 that I get to help mentor, but then I've got people who are in their early 50s that I get to help mentor. And so for me, one of the biggest things that I've had to do is to position myself not necessarily in a place of authority, but in a place of resourcefulness. So if somebody has a
Hmm.
question,
Okay.
I want them to be able to call me and talk with me and walk them through it, even if it's not something I'm going to get paid on, or even if it's something that I think should be simple. And so with that perspective for all the teams that I lead, I kind of have the same perspective with business owners because I've been there. Most bankers don't have that background. And so it's that head versus heart knowledge. It's one thing in your mind to be able to look at a spreadsheet and say, okay, here's where you're falling short. Here's what you need to do. It's another to have experienced it. One of my former clients in Washington, we'll just call him Brian. That has nothing to do with who they actually are, but we're going to call him Brian. I was managing Brian, and we started talking about some of the hardest things that we've ever had to do with our companies. And both of us had a very similar story that no banker would probably have, but we were both short on payroll during COVID, and we both took some money and bought options on GameStop and AMC at the time that everything was running crazy.
Hmm.
And from a banker's perspective, that's insane. For those listening to this is not financial advice, but
Two
that's what I
two of
did
the
at the
three
time.
co-hosts on this podcast also put money in AMC.
Yeah.
Eric,
And
you might
so
have. Did you invest in GameStop too, or is it
No, I
was
missed out
just
on
a?
that one.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. I was just you're in good company here.
GameStop was a
So
good test for everybody, and then that was pretty much. I was like,
uh,
okay, AMC's probably it.
Yeah, so we'll see. We both gambled what little we had on payroll, and at the time, I mean, you couldn't lose on those unless you bought in at the top. But we made enough to both of us cover our payrolls. Completely different industries, completely different geographical regions, but we both did the same thing. And it wasn't because we were trying to make extra money. It was like that was our only option. It was a gamble, but it was that's what we had to do. So coming into the banking world with entrepreneurial experience, it kind of has set me apart because I can have those real conversations. But then I also understand what it's like to look at something from the lens of it being like a child. And one of the things that I struggled with the most when I had the tea company was letting go of control and letting somebody else do something because I was afraid that at the time that they might mess up or the order wouldn't have been packed correctly or, whatever that looked like. And towards the end of my journey, I got to the point where I was able to start letting go. But what you see in a lot of the companies that I work with is the owners or the founders are still heavily involved and they haven't been able to make that jump yet to where they're functioning like a CEO instead of like an owner. And they kind of function differently because owners are going to function in every capacity. Their hands are going to be tied in all different directions versus from like the CEO perspective or CFO or whatever they're good at. That's all that they focus on, and they continue to make decisions that help the company to grow rather than deal with things that maybe are should be delegated to somebody else.
So, in your experience, how do you kind of differentiate that in terms of if you speak to other entrepreneurs that might not realize what they actually have to delegate versus keep doing what they're doing?
Yeah, so I meet with 2 types of people. I meet with people who are proactive, and then I meet with people who are reactive. And that's just the nature of banking. For example, the proactive person might set up fraud filters so that they don't experience fraud. And then the reactive person is blowing up my phone because they are experiencing fraud and losing a lot of money. For the people who are proactive, part of working with me at the bank is that you get more than just your typical financial pitch. So what I like to do is the first time I meet with somebody, we don't talk banking at all. I don't talk about credit cards. I don't talk about loans. I don't talk about any of that. I just get to know them and their business and ask them questions, kind of like you're doing to me right now, but just get to know their story. And then I share
Hmm.
portions of my story with them wherever it's relevant. And then the second time that we meet, which is typically 60 days after that, that's when I'll have had time to digest what they told me. And, one of the questions I'll ask is like, what's your biggest struggle? And that could be financially. So that could be a bank question, or it could be logistically. And so that's kind of what I try to find out, because I also have managed so many people. I've got a lot of resources if somebody's looking for something specifically. And so that's kind of what it looks like. At first, it's a full consultative. I want to get to know you. I want you to get to know me. I'm not trying to sell you anything because I just want to partner alongside you. And then as we go through that, then we'll start to talk about, ways that I have to do things for the bank and ways that I can add value to your business, but it's tailored to you specifically versus like, trying to sell every credit card that you can or sell every loan that you can. It's a different approach. For the reactive people, however, I've had a lot of that lately. When the tariffs went into effect recently,
Mm.
we saw things coming out of China with 100, 200% tariffs. And several people, you might think that you're an American company and you might be because you're located in America, but a lot of people supply stuff from China and other countries.
Uh-huh.
And
Sure.
when those tariffs went into effect, I had several companies, whether it was a clothing company or it was, a speaker company, needing lines of credit because they couldn't afford to pay for the new import taxes. And so that
Hmm.
was very reactionary. They're calling, freaking out, don't know what to do. And so that's kind of something I've been coaching people on too, is we need to switch from being reactive to react, because like a line of credit is something you could set up at any time. You don't have to wait until things get bad to have something like that.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where I've
Sure.
been trying to help my clients plan forward. At first, it's okay to be reactive in the moment, but like now moving forward with these clients that are asking for stuff to be set up, it's regular check-ins and actually make sure you take my call so that we can plan for the future. Because I've been both. I've been proactive with the T company and I've been reactive with the T company, and I understand what it was like to walk through COVID as a business owner, and I also understand too that not everybody is thinking that way. And so that's part of what I try to offer.
What are some things that you do to, I mean, going back to being proactive, but there definitely is, you can definitely be too proactive to where nothing actually happens. You don't move forward. So how do you kind of like measure that? How far do you actually go versus how much do you let to actually be reactive to? And then how do you train your employees to react when those situations come?
Yeah. So we'll start with that second portion. I truly believe that attitude reflects leadership. And so in any organization, if you're not either being the leader or there's not a good leader presence there, everything will be reactive. There has to be procedures set in place. There has to be guidance and mentorship. And one of the big things I'm a believer of, both at my work at the bank, but then also when I owned my own company, was people are worth investing in. And so, with how I led my company, I was the type of boss that any problem that came up, you could come to me and we could talk about it and we could try to figure out a solution, even if it meant, because I had one employee that left to go start their own business, and I was excited for them and wanted to help, push that forward. And so, I think that attitude reflects leadership, and if there's good leadership and guidelines in place, the reactiveness would be minor compared to something major. On the flip side, however, though, you can be too cautious and you can take too long to make a decision. And so an example of that might be in the banking world, not getting that line of credit because it was going to cost you $1,000 to maintain for the year, might be being too cautious, but then as soon as you need it, you've got to be reactive about it. Likewise, you can also overplan. And so I'm a big believer that if you feel like you should do something in your gut, do it right then and then make it perfect later. You know, you have to
Mm.
be kind of bold in those decisions. And so if you get to the point where you're thinking about something too much and you're contemplating it too much and you're looking at all the pros and all the cons, eventually you just have to pull the trigger. And So I do agree. I think that there's a measure to people needing to be reactive because you have to make quick decisions. And entrepreneurs, I think, are really good at being reactive. But then there has to be an element of it too, where you're forecasting what your future looks like. And then even too, as you're planning that, if the business needs to make a change, you need to have enough information that you can make that decision, with an educated choice.
Yeah,
That's true.
And
it's good stuff.
thinking about that, Michael, I mean, and you may have already, this last answer may have answered this question. Being on both sides, having been the entrepreneur and also the one who advises entrepreneurs, like, what piece of advice do you wish someone had given you earlier in your journey?
Mm.
The one, a guiding North Star, like, something like that.
Oh man, there's a lot of things I've learned and a lot of advice I've been given. Number one is probably don't give up, which it sounds corny, but as an entrepreneur, you face so many different obstacles and difficulties and things that you might not have even known about yet because you don't know what you don't know if you don't know it. And there were many times that I just wanted to quit and just throw it all away and just move on. And I made it through those times. And it's kind of like the idea that this too shall pass. Eventually, whatever the good times or the bad times, it will pass and you'll be able to continue moving forward. So that would be number one. And then the second thing had more so to do with me and the age that I was and the status that I was starting to collect. But it would be humble. At the time, I'm younger. I'm the youngest of my friends to own a business. I've got a liquor license. I was the hot spot. I was that guy when people called. Um, that's not how I ultimately wanted to live my life. So part of selling it too was getting being able to change identity. There were definitely times where I would start thinking that I was doing this on my own, when in reality it was the community that was behind me and the mentors in my life that were helping me continue to push it forward. And then the last piece of advice, and this one's probably the most important, would be to constantly stay learning, constantly be curious. You're never done growing and you're never at the point where you've learned enough. There's always something else to learn.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So my wife and I have a thing where we try to go to a walk every day. And we have a thing where, what random thing have you learned today?
Mm,
And it could be anything. And so for
yeah.
me, a couple days ago, it was, well, actually, now that I think of it, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'll say it anyway and we can bleep it out. But it was that male cheetahs, you can make a certain type of barking noise and it'll make the female cheetahs ovulate on demand
That's
anytime you
crazy.
want. And
That's
they're the only
crazy.
ones in the animal world that can do that. And I was
Yeah,
like,
that's wild.
but it's going back to random learning. It's like the most random
Yeah.
thing. It's like, okay, that's what I learned.
Yeah.
It's funny
That's
when you think
awesome.
about,
Always.
like, cheetahs being the fastest land mammal. Like,
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
speed
It's
dating
like
or
a
what? Like,
yeah.
speed
Yeah,
mating. That's what that
seriously.
is. Speed mating.
It's terrible.
That's great.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
that's awesome.
great. Wow, that's awesome. Well, okay, so those are some really good insights and kind of like advice that would have been great for you, kind of looking back. Wrap us up here with the future, right? Give us a best case scenario, 10 years, maybe even 5 years from now. Things are really smoking. What are you looking forward to the most, coming up in the near future?
Yeah, so for me, I listen to a lot of Alex Hormozy and Simon Sinek and some of those thought leaders. Eventually, that is my goal. Is I would like to write books. I would like to be a thought leader, and so I'm starting to implement that now on platforms and continue to grow that. But eventually, I want to do something like that, and I would like to start, which I know, Aram, you and I have talked about this, but a a platform where other entrepreneurs can come together and continually talk and discuss things on an online forum that specifically is related to entrepreneur mental health. Entrepreneurs are more likely to commit suicide than anybody else. And I think part of that, and I've experienced it too, you have high highs and low lows. And those low lows, because of how high the high was, it can be detrimental. And I think it's something that's not talked about as often as it should be, but I also see it every day when I meet with people, especially people who are being reactive or they had a bad business deal and now it's like their world's caving in. I hope to aspire and be part of that change, be able to be an advocate for all entrepreneurs. And so eventually that's, 5, 10 years from now, that's what I hope to be doing.
Yeah, that's huge too, because going with that, I think there's a lot of resources out there that basically say just go for it and go for it, but they don't really try to protect you around the mental side of it. So if you basically go all in on something and you lose it all, well then not only are you feeling that weight, but you're feeling the weight of actually you could be homeless. And I think having better resources that cover the psyche part of it, like, you know, it's the whole thing of go all in, or you're not in. But in reality, you kind of need to be smart about it, and
Yeah.
to a degree.
Yeah.
But if nobody's teaching you that, I can understand how
Exactly.
dark it could get. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. And,
I
and
love
I
it.
agree with you.
that's awesome.
Well, let me
Well,
know,
this has been
man. Let me
great.
know when you have it up and running. I'll help out where I can.
Sounds like a plan to
We'll all
me.
jump on.
It'd be a
Yeah.
good time.
It's great. Well, thanks, Michael. This has been great. Great insights. I appreciate you sharing with us. I think there's a lot of good stuff you've done, and appreciate you giving back by exploring that with us and sharing kind of some of those vulnerable moments in your journey. So thanks for being on here, man. I look forward to maintaining a great friendship and seeing where you go from here.
Maybe
Well, I'm
having you
looking.
back on and we can talk about more specific subjects. Like there's so many things that we could go into
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
could be in
absolutely.
separate episodes.
We definitely got to get you
Absolutely.
back on, Michael. Absolutely.
For
I,
sure.
I appreciate it. Well, thank y'all for the hospitality. It was really nice meeting everyone today. Look forward to staying in touch, and text me the link to this when it's published so I can watch it.
Will do.
All
Absolutely.
Will
Will
right.
do.
do.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.